The shower was still running when I opened the bedroom door. Steam drifted through the hallway like smoke from something quietly burning. Her voice floated out, soft but sharp. "No touching me today, okay?" She didn't know I was standing there. She didn't see the way I froze. My hand still gripped the folded towel I had gone to hand her. I stared at it, white, fresh, warm from the dryer, like it suddenly didn't belong in my house. I didn't answer her. Just turned and walked away. Downstairs, the house was quiet in the way empty buildings are. Not peaceful, just hollow. Her coffee sat untouched on the counter. She'd switched to oat milk last month. Not because of me. Not because of us. She'd read somewhere online it felt lighter. That word again, lighter. Everything she wanted lately was light. Clothes that were light. Music that was light. Conversations that didn't weigh her down. And me? I was heavy. I didn't cry. Not then. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the coffee go cold. I thought about how I used to pour her a cup before she even woke up. How I used to kiss her shoulder when she turned in bed. How, when we brush hands by accident, she used to smile like it still meant something. But now? No touching. No words. Just steam and silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened. I heard her bedroom door close. I heard the dull flicker of her phone screen lighting up. I heard her laugh, that laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in our house in over a year. And the worst part? It wasn't for me. Around 2:30 a.m., I sat up and opened her laptop. She never logged out. She trusted I wouldn't look. I didn't plan to. Until I did. And there he was. In a thread of messages stretching back months, hundreds of them. Jokes, pictures, and side things. She called him the name she used to call me. She told him she wished she could be in his arms without the weight of her real life. Without me. I didn't scream. Didn't smash anything. I just sat there in the blue glow of betrayal, with my heart folded in half like the towel still sitting upstairs. In the morning, she came down humming. She stopped in the doorway when she saw me. My packed bags. The note I left beside them. If touching me is too much, being without me should feel easier. So I'm making it easier. I didn't wait for her to respond. I stepped outside, into the early fog, and shut the door behind me. She ran after me only once. Not to stop me, but to yell that I had no right to snoop. That's when I realized something even worse than betrayal. She didn't feel guilty. She felt interrupted. And that's how everything started to unravel. She didn't follow me past the porch. She just stood there in her robe, arms crossed, not even trying to hide the fact that she was more annoyed than heartbroken. I remember thinking, that's it? After everything? 17 years, and the only thing she could say to stop me was, "You had no right to snoop?" I drove without a plan. My phone buzzed nonstop in the passenger seat, calls, texts, even a few from her sister. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I stopped at a diner 2 towns over where no one knew me, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and sat in a booth staring at a plate of scrambled eggs while trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Somewhere between the 5th cold bite and my 3rd refill of coffee, it finally hit me. She didn't love me anymore. She hadn't for a long time. She just didn't have the guts to say it. Or maybe she thought I'd never leave. But I did. And the moment I disappeared from that house, things started falling apart in ways I never could have predicted. First, there was the urgent email from our bank. An alert about a transfer I never authorized, $3, $200 gone overnight, moved from our joint savings into an account I didn't recognize. I called immediately. The guy on the line confirmed the account name. It was hers. She'd moved the money 2 days before I left. That's when I knew. She didn't just fall into someone else's arms. She planned to fund her escape using our money. Correction, my money. Because I was the only one working for the last 8 years while she focused on herself. Anger started to boil, but I swallowed it. I wasn't going to call and scream. I wasn't going to grovel either. I just did what I had to do. Froze the remaining accounts, transferred what was left to a private one, and started making notes. Screenshots. Statements. Everything. I booked a cheap motel room under a name she wouldn't guess. The lock barely worked, and the carpet smelled like damp socks, but at least no one would find me. I spent the whole night reading every message I could stomach from her laptop backup. Thank God I had the sense to make a copy before I left. The guy she was talking to? Not some new fling. Not some mystery stranger. It was my ex-best friend, Trevor. The same guy who stood next to me at my wedding in a suit I paid for. The same guy who cried when we toasted to forever. He lived 2 hours away, but apparently made more emergency trips than I ever knew. Hotel receipts. Calendar entries. Photos that made my stomach twist. Some of them were taken in my house, in our bed. And here's the thing that truly messed with my head. She didn't even try to hide it. There were no fake names, no encrypted apps, just wide-open messages about how numb she felt with me and how Trevor made her feel like herself again. You know what's funny? She used to say I made her feel like herself again when we first met. I remembered her saying those exact words the night we got engaged. That night she cried and told me no one had ever made her feel more seen. Now, I was just some background noise to be faded out. Some blurry extra in the movie she was remaking in her head with someone else. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay on the motel mattress staring at the ceiling fan that made a low clicking sound with every rotation. I thought about all the times I'd let things slide. All the times I'd back down during fights, apologized just to keep the peace, paid her credit card bills in silence even when she swore she'd cut them up. I thought about the time she forgot my birthday, literally forgot, and how I told her it was okay. It wasn't. It never was. And yet, for all her planning, all her sneaking around, she hadn't expected me to actually leave. She thought I'd stay, like always. That I'd find out about Trevor and somehow still forgive her. That I'd keep pretending. But she was wrong. The next morning, her first text came in. Can we talk? No apology. No explanation. No remorse. Just those 4 words. Like I was the one who had overreacted. I didn't respond. Because I already knew the truth. She was never going to be honest until she realized I was truly, finally gone. And even then, her secrets were just getting started. 3 days. That's how long it took her to show up. I hadn't told anyone where I went, not my brother, not my coworker, not even the guy I play cards with on Fridays who's usually up in my business more than I like. I left no trail. I used cash. No social media check-ins. I even parked 2 blocks away from the motel and walked the rest of the way. I was careful. I was quiet. But not quiet enough. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. I froze, mid-bite into a vending machine granola bar, crumbs spilling onto my lap. It wasn't a loud knock. Just 2 polite taps, like whoever was on the other side wasn't in a rush. My stomach tightened, and I instinctively reached for my phone, only to remember I'd turned off location tracking 2 days earlier. I stayed still. The knock came again. And then, her voice. Elwood, I know you're in there. That voice. That calm, condescending tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable while implying you were the irrational one. I hadn't heard it in 3 days, and already, it grated. I didn't answer right away. I stood behind the door, listening. I expected her to cry, to say she was sorry, to beg. She didn't. Instead, she sighed and said, "This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. We need to talk like adults." I opened the door. She didn't flinch. She stood there like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just emotionally bulldozed our marriage and paved it over with Trevor's grin. She wore a soft gray sweater, one I bought her last Christmas, and a look that said she came to fix things. Like she had the right to stand in front of me and still call this ours. "You left," she said, like it was some accusation. I leaned against the doorframe. "You told me not to touch you. What was I supposed to do, Clap?" She rolled her eyes. "You're twisting things again." "That's not what I meant." I almost laughed. "That's what she did." She minimized, deflected, twisted. Every truth I tried to bring up got rewritten in her version of events. And now here she was, acting like she'd just misplaced her keys instead of detonating our entire life. "You drained our savings," I said flatly. Her face tightened. "Just a second." Then the mask returned. "I moved some money. I didn't drain it. You sent it to an account in your name. Without telling me. It's still our money, Elwood." I shook my head. "You don't get to say our when you've got another man's hotel key in your bag." She flinched. A small, involuntary movement, like a crack in a mirror. But instead of crumbling, she doubled down. "You went through my messages. That's invasion of privacy." I swear, for a second, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Privacy? After she opened the door to another man while I was out earning money for our mortgage? Is that what you came here to do? Blame me for leaving? For snooping? For noticing? She looked past me into the motel room, took in the sad lamp, the peeling wallpaper, the duffel bag still half unzipped on the bed. Then she did something I didn't expect. She stepped inside. "Elwood," she said, softer now. "This doesn't have to be permanent. We can fix it. You need to stop making it worse." Worse. She thought I was making it worse. "You're unbelievable," I muttered. "I was nothing but loyal to you. I forgave your coldness, your distance. I even believed you when you said you just needed space. And all that time, you were just, what? Entertaining my best friend while I was buying groceries." I hadn't meant to raise my voice, but it spilled out. For once, I didn't care how I sounded. I was tired of shrinking to make her feel better. And finally, she cracked. I was miserable, Elwood. You were boring. Predictable. You never did anything spontaneous. You'd come home, microwave leftovers, ask how my day was, and then fall asleep to the same show every night. I felt invisible. That was it. The truth, raw and selfish. I nodded slowly. And instead of saying something, you let me keep loving you while you handed your affection to someone else. Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't moved. I'd seen those tears before. They were the kind she used to win, not to heal. You need to go, I said. She looked stunned. What? I'm not coming back. I'm not pretending this is salvageable. I'm not fixing something you demolished on purpose. You didn't want me. Now you don't have me. That's it. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just stared for a moment, like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't, because I wasn't the same anymore. She left without another word. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, is that she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And the next thing she tried? It nearly destroyed what little peace I had left. I thought that after I closed the door behind her, I'd feel something like peace. Maybe not right away, but eventually. Instead, I just felt empty. Not clean slate empty. More like scorched earth empty. As if everything I'd built, my marriage, my identity, my trust, had been reduced to dust, and now I was standing in the ruins, waiting for air that didn't sting to breathe in. For a full day, nothing happened. No texts. No calls. No emails. And honestly, I needed that silence. I took a walk by the river that ran behind the motel. I found a spot on a bench and watched the water. Just sat there, not thinking, not analyzing, just letting the quiet unravel the knots inside me. I thought, maybe this is how it begins. Maybe this is how I start over. But the thing about people like Tanya is, they can't stand losing control. And I had done the one thing she didn't expect. I stopped chasing. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I didn't crumble at her doorstep or spiral into desperate texts. I walked. That was my crime in her eyes. And for that, she made it her mission to punish me. The next morning, I got a call from HR. I was halfway through a gas station sandwich when my phone lit up. I almost didn't answer. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me press accept. And there it was, my boss's voice, stiff and careful. Elwood. I don't know how else to put this. A formal complaint has been filed against you. I froze. What? From who? He cleared his throat. Anonymous submission. Says you've been emotionally volatile in the workplace. Aggressive. Mentally unstable. I laughed. I actually laughed. You've met me, right? Look, I'm not saying I believe it, he said quickly, but corporate takes these things seriously. We're putting you on a 2-week leave while we look into it. I could barely speak. I sat there in my car, fingers tight around the steering wheel, shaking in a way I hadn't since my father's funeral. I knew exactly where this came from. Tanya had always known how to twist a knife just enough to cause damage without leaving her fingerprints. And now, somehow, she had wormed her fingers into the one place I hadn't expected, my job. I tried calling her. Just once. Not to yell. Just to ask why. Why would she come after me like that? She answered on the second ring, voice sugar-sweet. Oh, now you want to talk? Tanya, you filed a complaint with my job? She didn't answer directly. You walked out like a child. Actions have consequences, Elwood. You think I deserve this? You embarrassed me. You abandoned our home. And now you're playing the victim. I couldn't believe it. Somehow, she'd painted herself as the one who'd been wronged. And worse, she believed it. I didn't cheat, I said, my voice flat. I didn't lie. I didn't drain our account or sleep with someone I claimed to hate. I just left. You humiliated me, she snapped, running off like some martyr, making me look like the bad guy. You were the bad guy, Tanya. That was the last thing I said before hanging up. That night, she started messaging my family. My cousin, my sister, even my aunt who lives in Florida and only talks to me on birthdays. The messages were subtle at first, concerned. Just checking on Elwood. He's been acting so erratic lately. He left without explanation. I'm worried. Then they escalated. He's unstable. He yelled at me. I think he's having a breakdown. Maybe he needs help. She was poisoning the well. I called my sister. Thank God she saw through it. She's trying to make people doubt you, she said. Don't give her the reaction she wants. Stay quiet. Stay smart. Document everything. So that's what I did. I saved every message. I wrote a timeline. I got in touch with a lawyer. Because if Tanya thought she could rewrite history and paint me as a villain, she'd soon learn that I may be quiet, but I'm not helpless. But nothing could have prepared me for what she did next. Because when her campaign of whispers didn't work fast enough, she brought in the nuclear option, something I never thought she'd stoop low enough to try. She made it public. And that's where the real nightmare began. It started with a post. Not on her page, of course. Tanya was too smart for that. She had a burner account, a fake name, a quiet little corner of the internet where she could throw stones without showing her face. And the stone she threw that day? It hit like a meteor. I found out the same way everyone else did. A coworker messaged me. "Hey, is this about you?" he asked, attaching a screenshot of a post in one of those local Facebook groups. The kind where people share babysitter recommendations and complain about road construction. But that morning, the top post was something different. Warning: be careful around this man. He's emotionally abusive and unstable. It didn't name me directly. But the picture? It was of my car, parked outside my workplace. The same car Tanya used to mock for smelling like old socks and failed dreams. I clicked through the comments. Dozens of them. Some expressing sympathy. Others piling on. The ones that said things like "men like that are everywhere" or "typical narcissist behavior." Some were even tagging others, saying, "Isn't this your friend's ex?" Or "Didn't he work with your cousin?" The floodgates had opened. And just like that, I wasn't a man who quietly left a toxic marriage. I was a cautionary tale. I didn't know what to do. I paced around the motel room for over an hour, refreshing the page like it might magically disappear. I wanted to scream, to comment, to tell the truth. But I knew how this game worked. The first person to raise their voice always looked guilty. And Tanya had rigged the board perfectly. The real kicker? She didn't stop there. The next post came a day later. A long, emotional piece titled, "My Truth as a Survivor." Again, no names. Just vague enough to avoid legal trouble. Just detailed enough that anyone who knew us would instantly put it together. She talked about years of silence. About how she lost herself in the shadows of someone who never saw her. She used phrases like emotional neglect, power imbalance, and manipulative control. I read every line, and for a second, I almost believed it. That's how good she was. Tanya could take a garden-variety disagreement about laundry and spin it into a psychological war crime. And the comments? Even worse than before. "You're so brave. Leave and never look back." Men like that never change. One person even offered to help her find a lawyer who specializes in cases like this. I felt like I was losing oxygen. I tried calling her again, not to beg, not even to argue, just to ask why. But of course, she didn't answer. The next day, I got a message from her friend, someone who had always smiled at me like I was a charity case. "Stop harassing Tanya," it said. "She's been through enough. You made your bed. Lie in it." That's when I realized I wasn't just being erased. I was being replaced. She wasn't content with me gone. She needed a new story. One where she was the wounded heroine, and I was the ghost of every man who'd ever wronged her. I tried to keep my head down. My lawyer advised me not to respond publicly. He said we'd build a case if it escalated. But it was no longer a question. It was escalating. That weekend, someone slashed my tires. It happened at night. I hadn't told anyone where I was staying, but clearly, word had spread. Whether Tanya gave it away intentionally or someone pieced it together, I don't know. But when I walked out of the motel that morning, I saw my car listing on the front left side like a wounded animal. 2 tires, completely shredded. There was no note, no message, just that same feeling of being watched, hunted. Like Tanya had let loose something she couldn't take back and didn't care to. And the worst part? I started to believe her version of me. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I stayed too long, apologized too much, disappeared too quietly. Maybe I made it easy for her to rewrite me. I sat on the curb, phone in hand, wanting to call someone, anyone, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What would I even say? "Hey, I'm not the monster my ex says I am?" It sounded pathetic, even in my own head. But something changed that night. I got a message, an anonymous one, from a name I didn't recognize. It simply said, "She did the same thing to someone else before you. You're not the first. You won't be the last." Attached was a link. I clicked it, and what I found on the other end of that message turned everything upside down. The message rattled me in a way Tanya's posts never could. Maybe because for the first time since I walked out that door, someone wasn't calling me crazy. Someone had reached out, not to accuse, not to sympathize, but to warn. You're not the first. You won't be the last. That line looped through my head for hours. I hesitated before clicking the link. I was already paranoid, already spiraling. I didn't know if it was a trap, a prank, or some random conspiracy blog. But something in my gut said, open it. So I did. It was a blog. Low-key, ugly layout, white background with clunky black text. It didn't scream credibility. But the content? It was like someone had taken my story and run it through a distorted filter. Different names, different town, but the same structure. A woman named Carly, married to a man named Derek, had filed a police report against him 2 years ago. Emotional abuse. Psychological intimidation. She told the neighbors he had violent outbursts. Claimed he was hiding money, cheating, manipulating. For 6 weeks, he lost everything. Job suspension, restraining order. Even his own mother turned on him. And then, quietly, the truth came out. The screenshots she'd submitted as proof were fabricated, cropped, rearranged. But the damage? Permanent. The blog was written by Derek himself. It was his digital graveyard. He detailed every lie, every friend lost. Every night he slept in his car while Carly posted TikToks about surviving toxicity. He had nothing left but the truth. And maybe that was why he posted it. My hands were shaking. I scrolled down to the comments section, half expecting it to be empty. But it wasn't. There were others. Other men. Different names, different cities, but the same blueprint. They all described a woman who weaponized silence first. Then withdrawal. Then storytelling. Carefully constructed narratives that painted them as unstable, cold, and cruel. One by one, their relationships unraveled. And all of them had a common thread, a mutual acquaintance. Tanya. Sometimes she was a college friend. Other times just a name tagged in an old photo. One guy even mentioned her by full name. And that's when it hit me. Tanya didn't just rewrite our marriage. She had experience. I sat on the edge of the motel bed for what felt like an hour. The curtains were half open, letting in that awful orange glow from the street lamp outside. I watched the light flicker and tried to make sense of it all. This wasn't a woman who lost her way. This wasn't someone who just made a mistake. Tanya knew what she was doing. And I was just the latest chapter in a story she'd already written before. I needed proof. I created a throwaway email and messaged Derek. I didn't expect a reply, but 10 minutes later, I got one. Simple. Blunt. Tanya. Yeah. She did the same thing to me. Smeared me all over town. Got her friends involved. Got me fired. You're not alone. We talked for over an hour that night. Via email, then a phone call. He didn't want sympathy. He just wanted to be heard. We swapped details. Dates. Behavior patterns. It was eerie how much overlapped. How the phrases she used on him mirrored the ones she used on me. You're always making it about yourself. I feel smothered. I just need space. It wasn't accidental. Tanya followed a script. A cycle. And now, the final act of that cycle was playing out, again. The public smearing. The manipulation. The cold, clinical detachment that made her look calm while her victims unraveled in confusion. I thought I was her first emotional casualty. Turns out I was just the newest entry in a pattern of destruction. And that realization lit a fire in me I didn't know I still had. I wasn't going to be another silent victim. I wasn't going to wait for the smoke to clear while she stood in the ashes and played innocent. If Tanya wanted to go public, fine. Two could play that game. Only difference? I had facts, evidence, a paper trail, and now, a network of people who knew exactly what kind of person she really was. The next morning, I printed everything. Messages, photos, screenshots, testimonies from other men. I organized it into folders. I even started documenting timestamps, matching her posts against my calendar entries, proving her abuse timeline didn't hold water. I sent copies to my lawyer, my HR department, and one very strategic envelope to her newest employer, the nonprofit she just started consulting for. You know, the one that posted about integrity, healing, and emotional safety on their homepage. I wasn't going for revenge. I wasn't going for drama. I was going for truth. And I had a feeling Tanya was about to get a taste of it for the first time in her life. When I dropped those envelopes into the mailbox, I expected some kind of reaction. A storm. A scream. Maybe a frantic phone call with Tanya's voice twisted in panic or fury. But what came instead was silence. And that silence wasn't comforting, it was terrifying. I waited. 1 day. 2. Then 5. Not a word. No angry texts. No vague Facebook posts. No retaliation. Just nothing. And that's when I knew she was planning something. Because Tanya doesn't go quiet unless she's setting a trap. On the 6th day, I got the first message. Not from her. From a man I'd never met, a new name. He'd found the blog I helped Derek update. The one with the now-growing archive of men who had been emotionally ruined, publicly shamed, and professionally gutted by the same woman. He thanked us for speaking out. Then he told me something that stopped my heart. She had filed a temporary restraining order against me. I didn't believe it at first. I checked my email. Nothing. My phone. No calls. But when I went to check my apartment's mailbox the next morning, because yes, after weeks of motel life, I finally moved into a tiny sublet above a laundromat. There it was. A thick white envelope stamped with court markings. Inside were 3 typed pages of lies. She claimed I'd been stalking her, that I had shown up at her house uninvited, that I had sent threatening letters to her job, that I was mentally unstable and had a history of controlling behavior. She even said she feared for her safety. It was so dramatic I almost laughed until I realized a judge had already signed off on it. I now had less than 72 hours to respond. If I didn't, it would become permanent. And just like that, Tanya went from being the villain in the shadows to the victim on paper. I called my lawyer immediately. He told me to breathe and bring everything in. Every printout, every message, every shred of evidence proving I hadn't laid a finger on her since I left. And I had it. I had everything. Time-stamped bank records, emails, security camera footage from the motel showing I hadn't left the building the night she claimed I was lurking near her window. But here's where things got more twisted. The nonprofit she worked with? The one I sent the package to? They didn't respond to me, but they did remove her from their website. Quietly. No public post. No explanation. Just gone. I only found out because one of the other guys from the blog checked and screenshotted it. Tanya had been wiped clean from their roster like she never existed. And then came the phone call from her. I didn't answer the first time, but she called again and again. By the 4th ring, I gave in. I didn't say hello. Just waited. You went too far, Elwood, she said. There it was. The voice. The ice behind the words. No fear. No regret. Just control. You lied to a judge, I said. You filed a false restraining order against someone you haven't seen in days. You left me no choice. You tried to ruin my career. I exposed the truth. You exposed your desperation. There was silence. And then she said something I'll never forget. I'm not the one who looks crazy right now. That was her power. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to post dramatic breakdowns or flip tables. She weaponized calm. She wore innocence like armor, and when she wanted to, she made you look like the aggressor just by breathing too loudly. But what she didn't expect, what she never saw coming, was that I'd been recording the call. It was legal in our state. One-party consent. I double-checked. My lawyer double-checked. That call? It was now part of my defense. 3 days later, we walked into court. She arrived dressed in white. Of course. Hair perfect. Makeup soft. She clutched a tissue she didn't use and sat down beside a lawyer who looked like she didn't believe half of what she'd been told. And me? I showed up with facts. A calm voice. A binder thicker than a Bible, labeled and tabbed and ready. The judge reviewed everything. He asked me a few questions. Asked her a few more. Her answers were shaky. Slippery. At one point, when he pressed her timeline, she said, "Well, I think it was that day," and he cut her off. You think? Or you know? Her silence was the beginning of the end. I submitted the recording, played it back in the quiet courtroom. Her voice, cold and measured. You went too far. You tried to ruin my career. You left me no choice. The restraining order was denied. Not just denied, dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile it again. But what came next wasn't celebration. It was something deeper, heavier. I realized something that day, watching her walk out of that courtroom, still holding the tissue she never cried into. She wasn't going to stop. I might have won the battle, but Tanya wasn't done rewriting her version of me. And as I'd soon learn, her final move would be her boldest one yet, because she wasn't going after me anymore. She was going after my mother. I didn't think she could still surprise me. After all the gaslighting, the lies, the fabricated abuse, the online smears, even the restraining order she filed to silence me, after all of that, I truly believed I had seen the worst of Tanya. But then she reached out to my mother. It was a Sunday morning. I just stepped out to grab coffee and clear my head when my phone rang. My mom was crying. Not the soft, sniffly kind of crying. The kind that's sharp and quiet and full of shame. The kind you feel deep in your stomach. Elwood, she said, why didn't you tell me you were dangerous? I stopped walking. She'd received an email. An anonymous message, though let's be honest, we both knew who it came from. It was a carefully crafted essay, full of half-truths and exaggerated claims. It accused me of being controlling, emotionally unstable, even hinting at violent behavior. It referenced moments from years ago, twisting normal disagreements into something sinister. Tanya had gone deep, reaching into private family stories, repackaging them into some manipulative cautionary tale, then delivering it straight to my mother. It took me a minute to calm her down. I walked her through everything. The screenshots, the blog, the recording, the court case, every thread I'd been pulling for weeks. By the time I was done, she was quiet again, this time not in fear, but in realization. I raised you better than to give up on yourself, she said. Don't let her make you forget who you are. That was the turning point. Because up until that moment, even with all the evidence, I still doubted myself. Tanya had done such a good job making me question my own story. I'd almost forgotten what it was like to trust my own voice. But hearing my mom say she believed me, that she knew me, that undid something inside me I hadn't realized was still knotted up. And then something incredible happened. People started to speak up. One of Tanya's former coworkers reached out, someone I'd never even met. She said she'd seen Tanya do this before, that she'd warned people in the office about dangerous exes who later turned out to be perfectly decent men. She offered to submit a statement for any legal action I planned. Then another woman came forward, Trevor's ex, if you can believe it. She'd been quiet for years, but apparently my story sparked something in her. She said Tanya had manipulated Trevor into ghosting their relationship entirely. She'd been isolated, pushed out, just like me. And now, finally, she was ready to talk. Piece by piece, the puzzle started forming not just in my world, but in hers. By the end of the month, Tanya's narrative had begun to unravel. Quietly. Not in one dramatic explosion, but in the way reputations rot slowly from within. Her consulting gigs dried up. The nonprofit she used to champion released a vague statement about internal restructuring. She scrubbed her social media, turned everything private, and disappeared from the very platform she used to crucify me. And me? I didn't go back to the motel. I found a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had sunlight in the morning and a neighbor who said hi without suspicion. I got my job back. HR quietly acknowledged the complaint lacked sufficient basis. My boss apologized in his awkward, fumbling way. I didn't care. I was just relieved. And one evening, after work, I sat down on my new couch, opened a fresh notebook, and started writing not a blog, not a post. Just for me. I wanted to remember everything. Not to relive the pain, but to honor how far I'd come. Because I had survived it. All of it. I didn't win with vengeance. I didn't win by shouting louder. I won with truth. With proof. With stillness. And most of all, I won by walking away quietly, finally, and for good. So yeah, Tanya tried to burn everything down. And for a while, she succeeded. But here's what she never understood. Some of us learn to rebuild in the ashes. And what we build after that, it's stronger than anything she ever touched.